Zoe, as I mentioned in the first show and talking about habits, it's just so relevant to your book. Influence is our superpower. We're talking about how to go out there and thinking initially of influencing other people. And yet here we're talking about our personal habits. And we've got, of course, James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, going through the roof right now. And we're trying to figure out, how can I influence myself? And we talked about that aspect that people correlate usually negatively to influence, of manipulation. And yet I'm thinking about every day, I'm just trying to take the next thing I want to get myself to do. And how can I manipulate myself? That's not a bad thing, is it?
Not in the way that you define manipulation. No,
Okay.
no, it's a good thing. And the only person harder to influence than your kids is yourself. So we think that it's hard to influence other people, and we just aren't being conscious of how difficult it is to influence ourselves. And we imagine that it takes motivation, right? And a lot of times what it takes is just making it easier to do the things that we want to do, or making it more pleasurable to do the things that we want to do. And I discern or distinguish pleasure from motivation, right? So pleasure is intrinsic rewards, and motivation is some kind of external reward in this context I'm thinking about. But what I find is most helpful for me, more than anything else, is some kind of external social support, because I'm a people pleaser. And we talked about this in the other show.
Yeah.
I know you can relate to that too. So I'm a people pleaser, but I'm not a Zoe pleaser in this way. So I'm not a good boss of me.
An interesting way to put it. I like that. Okay.
I have a coach for this reason.
Okay.
And I've been working with a coach for over a decade. She's responsible for probably 40% of my happiness and my success, because I need to have a boss. I need to have someone be the boss of me. I'm a professor. Nobody's the boss of me.
And so when you say a coach, give me a frame of reference of a life coach, business coach, health coach. Where is she?
She's a personal coach, but we cover a lot of professional and business stuff as well. And actually, she's given me a ton of advice for the book that I wrote. And I talked through lots of the concepts and material with her. And she taught me my favorite influence technique, which is the magic question, which you used on the show earlier with your son, which was, what would it take? Yeah. It's a great coaching question for other people, and a question that we can use for ourselves and for anyone that we're trying to influence. What would it take? So that was from my coach, Mandy.
And that one, yeah, that goes in the face of that negative aspect of manipulation. When you come out and just say, look, I want to influence you. How can I do this for your, well, it should be framed in for your good. This isn't about me, but how can I do that? So I appreciate it.
Depends. And it could be just something that you want, right? What would it take for me to get a promotion, for example? Okay. What would it take for me to be paid at the top of the salary band for this role? And when you come to your boss and you ask a question like that, you're not saying, because I am trying to benefit you, boss. It's fine that some of what we're asking for is just for us, but your boss will be happy to tell you exactly what it will take, because they want you to be productive and engaged and happy and stay, and not be part of the great reset or resignation or whatever we're calling it.
Well, okay, shameless promotion. That is chapter 3.5 of Zoe Chance's book, Influence is Your Superpower, and it's called Ask. So listen to the first show to hear us talk about that. So I often start off with, just the arena of health, your own personal wellness, your exercise, your nutrition habits. I want the behind the scenes look at what Zoe does. Now, I know you did, at least from an exercise standpoint. I so appreciated your TED talk on, I forgot the title. It was on addiction. What was the title?
It's called How to Make a Behavior Addictive.
Yes. And you came to that from your own story of your own addiction. Of course, you talk about addiction and then came at it, and it was addicted to walking, which most people are going to
know.
But okay, so I got to tell you, I totally got it. Exercise is my main drug. Here I've got my expensive, Garmin watch for me for riding and running. I pay attention to it, and I connect it to Strava, which I have friends who do that. And then Strava, the thing that I'm most addicted to there, if I put that there, is not even just the consistent measuring of how often I exercise or how long I went, or for me out here, it's the elevation, how much elevation did I do, but I'm just comparing myself to the last time. And so I love the little dynamic in there that says, I did this 2 days ago. I did a ride that's a consistent one that I do in the winters, especially. And it, of course, compared it. And I did a PR. It was better than I've ever done on that. Made me feel great. And here I am bragging to you and the whole audience about that. And they got me. Strava got me. And I'm sitting here talking about them. So I relate that. So all that.
And it's
bring us
great.
back.
And you're not addicted and you're not ruining your life. It's going well, right?
Yeah.
The Strava is a good influence.
Yes, it is. Now, but you shared on your, so folks go listen to her TED talk and you'll hear how it went awry a little bit for you. But tell me what you're doing nutritionally, exercise, all that good stuff.
Right now, so I had this book launch 6 weeks ago, and I have been doing a terrible job of personal care with health, with eating badly, sleeping very little, exercising very little. And this is also where my coach comes in. And Mandy, her number one goal for me is that I get enough sleep. That's always like, anytime I'm checking in, I have all of these goals that I want to reach and accomplish professionally. Just how are you sleeping?
What's your goal time wise? Not, I know that's not the holy grail, and my audience knows that the quality counts just as much as the quantity, but I'm interested in that. What's your quantity goal?
I wouldn't say it's a goal, but my preference is 9 hours a night.
Okay.
And I know that's very high compared to most people, but actually Mandy has persuaded me. And then I've read some research on it, including a book called The Power of Sleep, but some other stuff that in research experiments where they have people who are getting 8 hours of sleep, experiment with getting 10 hours of sleep, they perform better on things like measures of IQ. And when people who have had 8 hours of sleep during the night come in and they take a nap during an experiment, they again perform better on problem solving tasks and things like that. So I don't know if it's true for everyone, but I know that it's true for me, that I perform better when I get more than 8 hours of sleep.
9 is, I don't know if I've ever had anybody state it that high. I look at that. So I'm sitting here pulling mine up, and right now, and I'm at a deficit from my norm, but I have 8 hours and 9 minutes. That's at least the last week of sleep. And I had one recently where I did do 9 hours because I had a big day coming up and I wanted to perform. So I appreciate you pulling that out. So norm, let me go to your norm. So you're out of whack now. And I appreciate seasons and cycles. And of course, huge congrats on the book launch. But so so sleep is there on the norm. What are you doing these days from an exercise standpoint when you take the time?
What I aspire to be doing every day that isn't every day right now is just going on a walk or a run from my house. And I finally, for the first time since I lived in Colorado 20 years ago, for 5 years, and I would go out for a walk or a run every day in the mountains. And everywhere that I lived in Colorado, I could run somewhere beautiful from my house. And now is the first time that, again, I can do that right from my house, to find a beautiful place. And I live by a reservoir, and I feel like I'm in Colorado when I go run around by these lakes. Yeah.
How about nutritionally? Anything specific you ascribe to there?
I have recently shifted to just asking my body I find that my body is not a good decision maker in the grand scheme, but it's a good decision maker in the moment if I ask it very in a finite way, not what do you want to eat right now, but if and I literally have these conversations in my head, what is the right food for you right now? And my body will tell me, and then I ask, and what is the right quantity? And then I have made a surprising shift toward eating way less meat. And I'm not vegan, but much farther along that spectrum, just by finding moment by moment, like, oh, I guess my body doesn't really want to eat the salmon that I might have grabbed for it. So I usually eat pretty healthy. I like healthy food, but and so for me, when I'm not eating healthy, it's like, oh, I'm eating a lot of popcorn or something silly like that.
Does this come from a place of having been fairly restricted and regimented in the past, that you're giving yourself permission? No? Okay.
No, I've been really, really blessed to enjoy healthy food. I enjoy exercising, and my body frame is pretty small. And so all through my life until over 40, I didn't really have to think too much about what I was eating, and just pretty easy. And then over 40, now like I see I've got a belly that I didn't used to have, and like things look a little bit different. So now I'm, for the very first time as a woman, which is great. So I'm 47, and it's crazy to have lasted this long as a woman without going through restrained eating and all kinds of other and especially self-hating and obsessional kinds of relationship with food. But yeah, now I'm figuring it out, and I'm really glad to, I think, be figuring out, oh, I was actually just eating a lot more than I needed.
Yeah.
And when I ask, okay, and what's the right quantity for you? And then my body's like, oh, like just this little thing is actually all you need. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
I relate to that. I'm 50, I'm 51, and I'm surprised, especially with the amount of activity that I do. I exercise, as I said, is my favorite drug. I eat so little, and I look at the amounts that we have culturally gotten to, and I sometimes I think I'm not physically capable, especially with my sons. I cannot, if I ate that much, it'd be a bad deal. But yeah, but realizing how little I think that we need. And of course, we've got a lot of studies that show longevity and the association with calorie restriction, but that's anti
But when you say longevity, those are studies with animals that we're talking about, right?
of longevity. No, actually it's part of like Dan Buettner's Blue Zones, book at looking at where people are the healthiest and the happiest. And so often they, at least, no, I should say calorie restriction. How about if I just say less than the normal average American diet amount?
Okay.
Is that fair?
Okay. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the restricted eating studies with rats and things where they will restrict them to 75% of what would be a normal amount for a rat to eat. And then they can extend their lives quite a great deal.
I think restriction is probably not the right word. I'm trying to think of what it actually is, but just less, less than the actual norm. So we look at those, and we have our, especially again, I'll pick on my own culture, the American culture, and we tend to eat large amounts of food. We love that full feeling. And I get that. I was a pro cyclist. I did that too. But today, the amount, like what you said, and I'll look and go, it's a very small amount, but I'm going to eat a handful of bites and I'm going to be full. After that, it's just going to be for pleasure. That's okay sometimes, but overall, I want the health. Yeah. How about relationships, family and friends? You have a 13-year-old daughter, you said, right?
Yeah.
And this is a good time to ask it because you're in a busy season. And so when you're trying to safeguard those relationships, not just family, but your friendships and ongoing, what are some of the habits you have in place for that, Zoe?
I would love to have more habits related to my friends. I think I do get to spend quality time with my family, and I have this blended kind of strange shape of family where my daughter and my mom and my husband and I each have two separate houses, and none of us share the same two separate houses. So we all overlap with each other at different times on different weeks. Like my daughter has a super awesome baby daddy who's a colleague in my same department at Yale, and she's with him half of the time. And oh my God, I guess I would say I know it's not a popular opinion, but divorce has been one of the greatest blessings as a parent. And as long as, and I'm not saying you should get divorced or anyone listening should get divorced, but I have so much time to myself that other parents don't get because they don't have their child going to be with their other parent half of the time. So this is how I get to have a thriving career. It's how I do get to spend time with friends, and I do get to follow personal pursuits, and I get to travel a lot and things like that. So I'm in a way having an experience that's more like some dads have and not very many moms. But the other huge thing that I have the blessing of in my life is my mom living with me. And half of the time we live together, half the time she's in Philadelphia. And my mom is my very best friend, and she's my daughter's third or fourth parent. And they have a great relationship. And It's awesome. And my mom is so much fun. Like a little while ago, she comes into the kitchen and she has a cake. It's a total surprise that she has a cake. And there are these sparklers that are stuffed in the cake. They're on fire. And these are huge. They're not like candles. They're fireworks looking like it's going to set the house on fire. And she's just singing Happy Thursday to you.
I love it.
That is my mom.
I love it. I am a celebratory prone person and am often finding myself looking for, like today, it's snowing, the kids have a snow day. And my first thought is I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to get something. So maybe I'll do a cake with sparklers, because
and it's Thursday.
It's
today when we're talking.
Oh, it is actually. Yeah, it is Thursday. I love that. It's interesting, Zoe, when you talk about that, and you related it to the separation of divorce, but something that my wife and I did, she started it a long time ago, was just taking a sabbatical, in essence, whether it's 3 days, 5 days, whatnot, but it has become something that I look forward to. I'm giddy about it. Now, I am admittedly an introvert, so you could do with that what you will, but the time to get away that we do, I guess just the fact that we don't do that. We have our families 100%. Yeah.
How often and you do separate sabbaticals?
I do mine solo. Yeah. I mean, I'm going now. Yeah. I mean, we do, getaways together, but no, I'm talking about just by myself. I take off in my van with my bike and all my stuff. And I may sleep in a tent. I may get a hotel. I may stay at a friend's cabin. I literally my point is to not have a plan. I'm going to take off, kind of like what you said, listen to what my body wants to eat. What does my body want to do today? And as far as writing, now of course you did your book. Well, you wrote it a few years ago, but
I wrote it 4 or 5 years and I just finished it.
Okay,
I don't know, 6 months ago, but
I understand that. I think my story is going to end up similar. But that's such a great time for me to go. I call it to go down the rabbit hole, to get someplace where, even here in my office, it's still where I do business. There's other distractions. And so to get away. So I'm a fan of, in whatever way, of taking time to get away and just get to know yourself, if nothing else.
Yeah. That's amazing. Does your wife also take sabbaticals?
Yeah.
Like I think that's an amazing way to have 9 children. And I think all parents need sabbaticals, and almost no parents ever take them. So I'm so happy to hear that you guys do.
And not to go down that, but even why do we not do spouse sabbaticals? I mean, and this is going to be, this flies in the face, as you know, of a lot of the perspectives, but I don't know, is there anybody I want to be with 24 hours a day? Not really. I mean, I like a break from anyone. I get tired of myself, much less anybody else. And so, but why do we not do that? So there's a good, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I put in a plug for divorce. I also want to put in a plug for not necessarily living in the same space as your spouse. So my husband and I each have 2 different houses, and we overlap in one of them, and we see each other definitely less than half the time. And we love each other to bits. And this is the healthiest, most sweet and romantic and fun relationship. And my dad and stepmom hadn't lived together during all of my childhood when they were together, and they would see each other on weekends. And they would joke around about how that was the recipe for relationship success. And I thought they were crazy. But now I feel like all the time I get to spend with my husband, we don't take it for granted. We appreciate it so much.
Gosh, we're going off on a tangent, because I have questioned, it's been in recent years, and it was in regards to some friends, and family members, multiple instances where there was one spouse suffering significantly, back to your aspect of sleep, suffering, their sleep was, and their life was exactly, I see you nodding your head, because of sleeping with their spouse that kept them awake. And I went, where did we come to this point to where it's by proxy? If you sign a marriage certificate, you have to sleep in the same bed, especially with this person who snores like a train or tosses and turns, or just like me, as a light sleeper. And it's this death knell if you don't even sleep in the same bed. And
Yeah, we have another bedroom, and it's not uncommon that one of us will go and sleep in the other room, and we get great sleep, and then we wake up in the morning and we're super happy to see each other.
Yeah. We ended up doing that when one of us is, sick and she's coughing or something. I go, man, I'm going to go sleep in the guest room. And we're like, I slept really well.
Yes.
in there. And yeah, when I go off on my getaways and I sleep, actually my favorite place is out in the middle of the woods with a mattress in the back of my van. That is literally where I sleep the best. I should probably just do that on my land, but okay. Well, there you go. There's a free rabbit trail for everybody. That was unexpected. All right. Next book is mental, just asking about you from a mental standpoint. Now we started off in this aspect of, or in this show of talking about how we work to influence ourselves, even, manipulate ourselves. But I look at that when I look at my mental state and what am I doing overall for my own mental health, mental well-being. And it is figuring out what are the things that I need to do. What's the magic sauce for me, and maybe different for you, to influence your mental state.
Yeah. And what you just said about what is the magic sauce for you, I believe in that wholeheartedly, that it's going to be different for each one of us. Yeah. But multiple things that I do. One of them is when I have a negative feeling or a negative experience, or when I have a really big positive one, I don't keep it to myself. And this includes when I've done something that I regret or that I'm ashamed of, I'll share that with, or somebody, I get rejected. And if I don't share these things with somebody, like a friend, my mom, my sweetheart, but sometimes even with my Facebook friends, I'll just post very personal stuff so that I have it out there, that it doesn't get its claws into me so much, as in the way that it does if I'm trying to repress it and trying to hold it in. But for anyone who writes, I have an exercise that made a tremendous difference for me as a writer that I do every time I sit down to write, in order to clear all of the mental cobwebs and all the distractions and everything that's trying to take my attention away from my writing project. And I call it my Nietzsche journal. The philosopher Nietzsche said that the purpose of being human is to become someone who does not deny. And I used to do some research on self-deception, and I found this fascinating. In my Nietzsche journal, I write one page where every single line begins, I do not deny. And then it's whatever comes out. I do not deny. I do not deny. I do not deny. It could be good things, bad things, funny things, anything at all. And a lot of times what happens is that I unearth some deep stuff that was in there that I never would have realized was actually taxing my mind, or I unearth something that is a deeply buried, beautiful, sparkling gem that I just would have never known about.
Now, I'm familiar with him and his stuff. Now, is this coming out? Did you say it came out of some of his works? This concept?
I just took the inspiration from something that he said about the purpose of being human is to not deny.
Oh, right. Where did he, do you know which book he is?
I'll find it. I'll find it and I share it. I remember the first place that I saw it was in Alain de Botton's Consolations of Philosophy. And that was how I became interested in Nietzsche. Okay.
That's interesting to me because I've recently had some times of, actually, I was looking at the Enneagram again. I was kind of back in that. We had somebody on the show and I was looking at it in regards to myself and found myself in a certain point of kind of that. I didn't think about it as far as what I'm not denying, but it's almost like an admission of, I am that. I don't need to fight that. I am that. I'm managing X, Y, Z. I am, well, in this sense, to be candid, I am a glutton. I mean, I just am. And I actually kind of like it. I kind of enjoy it. Now I got to manage it because it can go awry, but I just want to be okay being that is who I am. And I had my kids testify to my character, and it was along those lines. And so you saying it in that reference, I'm not going to deny X. Now, again, you said, it can be good, bad. It can be, it's just interesting. So yeah, I want to dig into that one.
And it's liberating, isn't it? To just look at that and say like, oh, okay, I'm a glutton. That's who I am. So I'll manage it in whatever way. I find it liberating and I find it empowering.
How about on the financial side of life? Any specific habits that you have employed there to keep yourself where you want to be?
My parents always lived below their means, and so
Mm,
I was lucky to have a good example of that. And now I'm lucky to be in a situation where it's not that hard to do that. But because I have taken that so seriously and tried to always live below my means, I'm in this amazing situation of a great book book coming out, and I have a thriving career. And because I'm trying to never use all that I make, I'm giving half of my profits from the book to organizations that are fighting the climate crisis. So
oh, wow.
350.org is the one that I'm focusing on and supporting
Okay.
this year. And I feel so wealthy. I've never felt so wealthy as as I feel being able to give away money and in a significant way. And it's one of the most satisfying things that's ever happened.
It doesn't get talked about as much probably as far as a financial habit, is the power of giving it away, of generosity. And again, how it feels our own self-interest. It feels great. So
It
thanks.
feels great. Yeah.
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 Thank you. You know, the next one I usually hit is spiritual, and it's, the aspect of looking at having a devotion to a bigger purpose and a greater picture that's out there. And one thing I didn't ask you about, because your book was I didn't ask about where the impetus of the book was, because it came from, as you said in the first show, it came from your teaching, came from your class. You've been doing this
Yeah.
for a while. I don't know the story of what got you to even pursue this topic, to pursue and ultimately create the class. Where did that come from? And I'm tying that into the bigger picture, because you're not standing up in front of a class or writing the book just for your own kicks. There's obviously something bigger you're serving.
Yeah. And I think it is a spiritual question for us to ask, what is the most helpful thing that I can do? And that was the question that I asked myself when I was getting hired to the faculty at Yale, where because I had been a brand manager for Barbie, they said, oh, you could come and teach consumer marketing. And because I had been researching philanthropy, actually, they said, you could come and teach social marketing, not social influencing, but nonprofits. And those two things would have been fine. But I asked myself, what is the most helpful thing that I could do? And I realized the most helpful thing that I could do would be to create a class for MBA students to become more influential. And it would draw on my background, including marketing and including research in psychology and behavioral economics, also sales, also negotiations, and also my background in theater in the charisma part. So it's just me, as generously as I possibly can, giving the best of what I possibly can that I think would be useful for people. And that's the same thing I'm doing in the book.
Well, I love the perspective. And on that, you just talked about your career, and that is the next one that we hit. And you mentioned that you're in a good place right now, but you have been, I'm always curious. I mean, you were doing the class. It is the, radically popular class. You're doing well. And now you did a book. You have done a lot of speaking, or doing a lot of speaking. So as with most people on the show, you got a lot of opportunity. What are the things you're doing to keep your career in the boundaries, as we talked about in the first one, in the boundaries that you want it to be in, to keep it manageable even?
I think maybe in the spirit of being as helpful as possible, maybe I could share something even more helpful than that, which
Please.
was a very difficult decision that I
Okay.
had to make about my career. And this was in I guess these conversations started in 2017. So it was before I had a great book deal. But I got hired to my dream job on the tenure track at Yale. And this was the job that I wanted more than anything my whole entire life. The teaching was going great, but what I'm supposed to be doing is thriving as a researcher and publishing like crazy in all the top journals. And I was publishing some stuff, but I didn't love it as much as I was supposed to love it.
Mm.
And because I didn't love it as much as I was supposed to, I wasn't able to be performing at the level that I was supposed to be performing. And I was focusing all this energy on my class. And so finally, I admitted to myself, I'm actually not on the right path. I am not just not going to get tenure at Yale, I'm not able to persuade myself, motivate myself, force myself to do the research that I'm supposed to do to even have a shot at it. By the way, here at Yale, it's so hard to get to the place where they decide if you have tenure. It takes a decade. And then if anyone thinks you're not going to get tenure, they tell you not to go up for it. If you've gone up for it, they think you'll get tenure, but 60% of people get fired instead of getting tenure. So when I say I wasn't going to get tenure, it's not that I sucked, it's that I wasn't going to be among the very small number of people who succeed instead of getting fired. And I was deeply ashamed to talk to my senior colleagues and say, listen, and with my mentor, Gal, he's the first one I told, I just said, I'm not able to do the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm not loving it. I'm loving teaching. And he worked with me, and some of my other senior colleagues worked with me to redesign my job. So now I have a half-time role as a senior lecturer, which is in academia. Being a senior lecturer instead of an assistant professor means you are not on the tenure track and you lose so much status. And you can't really see right now, but I'll show you if I tilt. I have on either side of my office, this teeny little office, glass walls.
Yeah.
And my office is the size of a king size bed. It's in the middle of a corridor, and everyone walking by can see you and me having a conversation right now. And I love my work here now more than I ever did when I was on the path that you're supposed to be on, on the tenure track path, and so, trying to do the research that you're supposed to do. And now I have so much freedom, and I have so much liberation, and I have so much motivation. Last thing about this is that as I renegotiated my job, which includes half the salary that I had before, so this was a big thing. As I renegotiated my job, I asked to not have to go to any department meetings or any meetings of any kind. And they said yes. And the amount of the level of thriving that I feel in my work now means that I go to more meetings than I ever used to go to in the past. But when I show up, people are happy to see me. They're like, oh, Zoe's here. And I'm so happy to see them. And it's great.
Thank you. That's a behind the scenes. It's worthwhile. Look at that. I'm so curious. It's so disparate to hear the different journeys of bringing people to the show here with something that they've got to offer the world, how that happened. And that is interesting. I've got back to kids again. I've got a kid he's really interested in just pursuing academia. And to hear that will be of interest to him, and it will a lot of folks on the show because it comes up a lot. So thank you for that. Last one here, Zoe, is really just the personal spoke, and you can put this in the self-care category. I like to also add on and not forget play and fun, hobbies, other interests, those things that just light you up and make you the inspired Zoe that you are. Tell us about that.
In the big picture, grand scheme, I love traveling and travel adventures and all that. Travel internationally for fun a lot as well as for work. And I love animals, and I'll take my daughter on wildlife vacations. Those are amazing. But just day to day, I just love laughing and goofing around with my family. And there are so many days that one or more of us laughs so hard we cry. Wow. And those are the things that keep me going.
That's it probably goes back to number one with sleep. There are very few things that are as life-giving as great sleep and great laughter. And I put that in here, play and fun and hobbies, because I got to a point in my life and realized I'm not playing. I mean, not that I wasn't having fun, but man, I don't play. And so to hear that laughter, I still have to have the kids remind me that sometimes we can watch something funny, Dad, instead of something profound and meaningful. Well, not that that's not meaningful. So, hey, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being candid. Thanks for giving us a behind the scenes. And I've got more to think about as far as how I influence myself. So thanks, Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's just really interesting to hear from you as well.
Thank you.